Okay, I think we're starting this for the second time. We good?
I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Okay, now this is a good sign because last time when you talked, your face never flipped around.
Okay.
So knock on, whatever you need to knock on. I think this is a much better start.
All right.
Okay, really quick, I'm gonna resend out this link to you and Derek. So I'm gonna do a little copying and pasting, and then sending that on Gmail. If you maybe wanna well, no one's even watching this yet, so let me send those out just really quick.
Yeah.
Um, okay, and then we can start kind of going through maybe kind of more of what we were thinking. New individual. Then really quick, you think you could send a new link to follow to Jen?
Yeah. We should be able to do that. Or can I invite people straight from the Hangout?
Yeah, I think you can. I don't think I have heard. The best way I've been able to do it is via like their emails. If it's
Okay.
easier than like their Google Plus name. So yeah, see if you can hit invite up at the top and then actually invite her to step in whenever.
Nothing happening when I click on it.
Okay, then I'll just send it to you really quick.
Okay.
I think that might be then the best. Okay. So yeah, the best laid plans, right? Like I had all of this ready to go, and then we jumped on, and our audio was awful. That was so weird because it's never happened before.
Oh yeah, and it's just frustrating because you were probably half an hour early. I was 20 minutes early and couldn't get
Yeah,
anything.
I gotta think. The only thing I can think of is that it might have something to do with the fact that I set it up early, because I kind of feel like that in some ways kind of bit me in the rear more than anything. It
Okay.
was harder to do some stuff, so I think, if this is something down the road we do, we'll just set it up like 2 minutes before. I think that actually might have had something to do with it. Okay, holler at me if you see that new link. I just sent it to you.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Okay, so I'll kind of wait until you throw that out to Jen, and then we can get started in like all seriousness here.
Okay.
The nice thing is we've been recording this to the YouTube channel, so even if people want to watch some of this in posterity kind of later, we can still send a link to that. So
Okay. All right. I got the new link sent to Jen, so we'll see if or when she shows up here. So we're gonna make her sit around for 10 minutes and wait for us to blather on about other crap.
no, I mean whenever she wants to jump in, if you want to have her come in now, I think now that we've had some technical issues, let's just throw all plans to the wind and let's just blabber for 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, sounds like a good time.
There we go. Um, so, I mean, we could do our quick introduction if there's anybody that watches this and doesn't know. My name is Andrew McCormick, and I teach middle school art, 8th grade, ninth grade. This feels weird, Tim, telling this to you because over the past month we've gotten like well acquainted, so it's like
Yeah.
you're like I already know you. So yeah, I teach in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I've been doing a couple of talks for Art of Ed now for a couple years, and my kind of confession is I am a podcast junkie. I love listening to podcasts, and when something like this was kind of approached, I thought it would be like a really good marriage of kind of some interest that I have. So I'll let Tim introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, I'm Tim Bogatz. I teach high school in Omaha, Nebraska, or just south of Omaha, Nebraska. Do a little bit of everything, grade 9 through grade 12, pretty much every media that you can think of, every different class that you can think of. It's a two-person art department for a school of about 1,500 kids, so they keep us busy, they keep our classes full, and we have to sort of be a master of all things. So keeps me on my toes usually, but it's a good time. And like I said, I'm kind of in the same boat as you are as far as just loving podcasts and thinking this works well. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I think with AOE Live, the main idea that we're going for here is just to try and have a little bit more in-depth conversation, because everybody has their PLN, and a lot of people are active on social media, but so many of those conversations are just kind of superficial. Like you can only do so much on Twitter, and so I think it's good to have a little bit of a discussion that can bring in a few more people and go a little bit more in depth than what you see, just a few clicks on a screen. So I'm hoping that we can accomplish something like that with this podcast here.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that's so true. I mean, I follow, roughly 400 people on Twitter, and that's really my main hub for all things PLN, and so much of it is like it holds your attention span for like a split second, and sometimes it's like, oh, I should go look at that link, and then you don't. Where I think of podcasts as being sort of this long game thing where when you're doing dishes, you're driving to school. I mean, even grading, or I do probably at least once a week. I go back to school to fire a kiln or clean or give the brushes little TLC. To have a podcast to listen to really would give you that more in-depth stuff. So,
yeah, and I'm kind of the same way. Like my plan period, even I spend a lot of time just sitting around thinking during my plan period, which sounds weird, but it's really helpful to me. But I also like to listen to stuff, when I'm in there. So I figure if we can fit this down to fit within somebody's plan period, then I think we might be on to something.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I listen to, I do that too sometimes, but then I feel kind of guilty that I'm not being more social with like fellow teachers, or just being kind of more present. I'm kind of in my own little world, but I just listened to a podcast where they talked to a teacher who wrote a really kind of famous blog post called The Myth of the 40-Hour Week Teacher, and he talks about his tips and tricks to really, it's 40 hours a week, and I know most of us are probably like, how the heck do you do that? Because I feel like I'm probably 55, 60, and I don't say that to brag. I actually wish I could do a better job of getting in and out and getting everything done, but one of the things he suggests is he really doesn't do a lot of socializing, which, is kind of tough, but you got to think about where you want your priorities to be and getting home to your family and all that. But I digress. Tim, when we started this conversation, we were talking about all sorts of different ideas, and there were some that were really white hot. We could have, to poke at you a little bit, we could have chosen to talk about TAB, choice-based ed, but maybe we'll save that for another conversation. But I thought grading was a good one because I think it's something that, I know me myself, I don't feel like I do it as well as I should, as well as I could, as well as I'd like to. But at the same time, I kind of do the best I can, and there's little tips and tricks, and there's little things that, we just got to be honest with ourselves. Grading art is kind of tough. It's a subjective thing, and so that's, we kind of went with grading, and we'll be talking about that with a guest coming on in a second.
Yeah, so Jen Carlisle will be joining us in a little while. She teaches 5th and 6th grade in Norfolk, Nebraska, and she's one of the new writers for The Art of Ed. Does some great things. I've known her for a few years now, and she's really, really impressive. So I'm excited to have her join us when she does. But going back to kind of what you said about grading and not grading as well as you like, and I think it actually goes back to that time thing that you were talking about, where if you want to grade well and you want to leave, extensive comments and all that, I mean, if you really want to do a good job with that and feel proud of yourself, it's going to suck so much time. Mm-hmm. And, is it worth it to put all that extra time in just to do a little bit better job? I mean, if you can do, 90% of the job with 50% of the effort, is it worth it to really go that extra mile and go that extra 10%? And, sometimes maybe it is. For me, honestly, most of the time it's not. When I first started teaching and wanted to, do a really, really good job, which is not to say I don't want to do a good job now, but, there's so many other things, outside of the classroom that I want to get to that, leaving, paragraphs of comments for my kids is not, where I want to spend my time. And maybe my grading would be better if I did that, but, for me, I'll make that choice not to.
Well, and I don't want this to become a pity party where we're both kind of beating each other up on our own things, like, oh, I wish I did this better. But I agree with you in that we prioritize as teachers, and I've often found that if I did give a ton of feedback in the form of written comments, and here's why I'm giving you this, and here's why I'm giving you this, and really break down every grade and every component of the rubric, I feel like that would take away from my strengths as an educator, which is curriculum development. Now, I love coming up with new projects. In the last few years, I've probably been turning over about 60 to 80% of my assignments are all things that I've never done before, and I get really jazzed by doing that. And I feel like if I spend all my time on really making like rock star stellar assessments, well then where's the energy for testing out this new thing or trying to plan this new thing? And some of it, I know that there's teachers out there who do assessments really, really well, and that's never been where I felt like my strength was and where I really got the most bang for the buck with my kids. The most bang for the buck that I get in my skill sets is new, crazy, kooky projects, being perceptive with what kids are into, and then trying a new thing. So that's that balancing act between like where you think your strengths are, I think.
Yeah, and one of the things that has actually helped me, both with giving more extensive comments, but also saving a little bit of time, is when my kids are working independently, which I have them do a lot. I teach high school; they're able to do that. I will pull kids aside and just do sort of a one-on-one critique with them, where say, "Hey, you turned this in yesterday. Here's what I really like. Here's what I don't. What do you think?" And then we can actually get into kind of an extensive discussion. And maybe we go through that rubric point by point, or maybe it's just a more general conversation. But in 50 minutes, I can get through maybe 10 really good conversations with kids. If my other kids are working independently, I really like to be able to talk to kids one-on-one, and I feel like that gives them that really good feedback, that authentic feedback, rather than just written messages going back and forth. And so that's one strategy that's been pretty successful for me.
And that's I don't lose a well, how should I say this? I know with PLC work, everyone is stressing CSAs and CFAs and data drives our decisions. Which there's a part of me that's like, data in an art room looks very, very different, So I feel like as a engaged and good teacher, you're constantly giving feedback. You're floating around the room. I always say floating around the room, and people give me a hard time because they imagine me with like little wings hovering. But you're talking to kids about what are they struggling with, what are they doing well, what questions or wonders do they have. That is the best formative assessment. Now, it's not necessarily common because I might not do it exactly the same way as another teacher, but that's where the kids really get feedback and insight, and it kills me to make a little spreadsheet that says, you should be able to do this skill, check, plus, minus, and it's just like, I might grade them on a Tuesday and they might be really struggling, but that doesn't mean by Thursday they're not doing great. Or even, let's say you have a ceramics project, and one ceramics project they're not really feeling, a month later they're doing really well. Now I know that that's what assessment's about, but then I think, where's the validity and the time to spend in making those things? So I kind of pay some of that stuff lip service, the let's all make the same spreadsheet, let's do it exactly the same way. I kind of do it, but I also know it's not where the really good assessment is coming in from. So how do you, when because I honestly think, and this might be kind of the catchphrase of the talk tonight, the thing that's worth quoting on Twitter is, I'm a fan of assessment, but I'm not a fan of grading. As we know grading now, like, here's this 2-week-long, 3-week-long major project, and I'm going to boil it down to an A-, a 92%, that is based on like lots of hocus pocus and hooey and who knows why. Whereas assessment, I think of feedback, critiques, self-assessment, portfolios. I love that stuff. Grading, I think, is when it goes south. So how do you, as a high school teacher, because I think it's even tougher or more high stakes with GPAs, how do you grade? How do you give grades, not just how you do assessments?
Right. Well, just to kind of hit one on, I'm not pushing aside your question, but I think as far as that sort of everyday assessment, that constant assessment just that comes from walking around the room, that's an inherent part of our job as art teachers. It's not very few of us stand up and lecture, and a big part of what we do is just constantly walking around the room, constantly talking to our kids. And so I guess what I would say as far as grading, the assessment that goes with that, is I'm hoping that I give enough feedback and push kids enough just from that day-to-day interaction that by the time they get to the end, then their project will reflect kind of what they've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are the things I do where, every day we have our objectives listed up on the board. Here's what we're looking for with this. We want, good composition. We want X number of values. We want this type of shading. We want precision in this part, whatever it may be. And so the kids know, I guess, what that rubric is and what they're looking for. But I think it's more about helping them sort of find their way along with that project. So when it comes time to grade, when it comes time to fill out that rubric, that's stuff that we've been talking about for a couple weeks now. And hopefully there's no surprises there. They know what's coming. And if I'm doing my job as a teacher, they know exactly what we're looking for with that project.
I wonder, I think grading is such a loaded thing because it's like our kids, and I teach 8th and 9th grade, and you teach 9th through 12th. By the time we get them, they've come to look at grading as a punitive or rewarding type system.
Yeah,
I'm going to be rewarded by being a good little kitty and getting an A, or going to be punished for being a bad little kitty and getting a D or an F or something that I don't want. And I feel like that when our kids feel that way and when teachers feel that way, we've missed the boat. I've always told people that I think of grading and evaluation, assessments, as a neutral, no judgment, no punitive weight. Here is where you are, right? And if anything, assessments should, if they're working well, guide students to learning more, making better artwork. So what you're saying about, we post it on the board, we talk to them, we float around the room, we talk to them, and because of that they make better work, then I think that's a really great assessment. But then again, it's like when it then boils down to how we grade things is where it can go funny. So I have just recently, and I know we kind of talked about this, I used to give like a participation grade or an effort grade, and I do something that's similar, but in my mind it's different. I call it a productivity grade, and it's kind of things like your studio habits, like are you making the most out of your time? Do you nickel and dime me with questions that you should really know the answer to? But I don't just say like, well, you're going to get a bad score on your participation grade this week because you kind of drove me crazy because you were acting really squirrely and immature. And when I was a new teacher, I really used to do that, and I use it as this like stick or carrot to get better behavior, not learning. It was all about behavior management. So I've ditched that. I've ditched things since I've kind of gone a little bit more towards standards-based grading, things like extra credit. I don't penalize kids for late work. I tell them when it would be nice to get things done because we're going to move on to another assignment. And if you don't get that first assignment done, you're really going to feel stressed because now you're juggling 2 assignments. But they have all semester long to get any assignment done at any time for full credit because I'm grading the learning, not their ability to play school. Maybe you can speak on some things that maybe you used to do as a new teacher and some things that you kind of evolved into or ditched along the way.
Well, you hit a lot of points there, but I think taking the last one first, yeah, I really, really hate having due dates for my kids. Because, there are some kids that work really, really quickly. There are some kids that take forever with their work. But 2 things I always tell my kids. Number 1, I would rather have a good project that's late than a bad one that's rushed and turned in on time. So, if they're being lazy and not going to get it done by the due date, then, yeah, we'll kick them in the butt a little bit. But if it's going to be late because they're putting extra work into it, if they're taking it home and adding all this detail, I am all for that. So I'll give them as much time as they need when that comes along. And the other thing I always tell them is, hey, on Thursday we are moving on to our next project. So if you can get this turned in by Wednesday, that's great. But whether you turn it or not, we're moving it on Thursday. So it's really kind of up to them to figure out how that's going to get done. But yeah, like you said, I'll give them all semester because whenever they want to turn things in, I'll take them, and I just want their best work. I don't want them to rush for some arbitrary due date.
I think a big push amongst a lot of teachers that I respect and people that I would consider to be in my art PLN is process over product, and not process at the expense of product, but that if you had to kind of pick one of those to favor, it's more about the process. I have, and this is maybe kind of a little guilty confession, I have given kids grades on work that was never finished by the end of the semester for exactly that reason. Like, they went so above and beyond. They've been busting their hump to get this done. It didn't get done by May 20th, whatever. I'm not going to give them a 0 or an F or an M for missing and then have that really negatively skew and affect their overall grade. I'm going to give them a grade on the process that I saw them do. Now, that doesn't happen a lot. I mean, a couple times a semester out of 140 kids and 7-8 projects per, but I really have no problem with that. And I know with some teachers that they might be appalled because they kind of want that pound of flesh, penalty for not sticking with it. But that's where I think I fall in that process product thing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely the same way, and I'm a product person, and if you've read any of my writing, you know that. But I very much appreciate the process too, and I can't penalize a kid for not getting stuff done. Like, they're 3/4 of the way done with their project. How do you turn in a 0 for that? You didn't learn anything because you didn't get it all the way done. Like, yeah. I don't know how you can justify that.
Well, and that really does go into standards-based grading talks where you can't really give kids, it's hard to give kids an F because they didn't get something done. Now, you could give them scores on like their life skills or whatever responsibility you want to call it, but I've always told people it's like averaging out the weather. If you have 4 days where you had data, and then on Friday the weatherman didn't calculate, and you just say, well, that's 0. That 0 so skews everything, and it really paints an unrealistic picture. The first 4 years I taught, the only kids I ever had fail, and I'd have kids fail art, it wasn't because they weren't good at art, it's because they weren't good at playing school, and they wouldn't turn things in on time. And they had such a mindset that, well, teachers don't accept late work, so it's a day late, so I'm not going to do it. And then it was like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They don't do the work because they know they're going to get an F, and then they don't do the next one because they know that why bother. So, I think maybe something as we move down the road, like, we could have a whole 2-hour conversation about standards-based grading and how it's like really a more accurate depiction of what kids learn. So.
Yeah, but going back to something that you said, and kind of along those same lines, when you're talking about those effort or participation or productivity grades. So here's my question for you. What do you do with a kid that is really talented and works really quickly? Like, let's say you have a 5-day project, they finish in 2 days, and it's incredible, and then they screw around for 3 more days. Like, what do you do with that sort of productivity grade?
Well, that's tough. I think that those, I honestly, I love those kids because they keep me on my toes. As you say that, I can think of a handful of kids right off the top of my head, like I can see them. And what I do is I think it's our job as educators to provide enrichment right in the class. That's a big push in education, is that the RTI, how we offer enrichment, intervention right in the classroom. So when I have a kid that's advanced, I try to give him other resources to like keep it going. So right now I'm teaching a bunch of sections at tech and art, and when a kid gets done early, it's like, okay, go look up a tutorial on YouTube that's kind of above and beyond what other kids are doing and see if you can do that. And for the most part, those kids kind of relish the fact that I'm giving them like a tougher, more advanced thing to do. So I actually, in the last, since I started my current job, which has only been 3 years, I've yet to have a kid that races through and does good work and then just wants to screw around. Usually they race through and do good work and then they want like the next thing. So that's like really what we want. But now that does force you as a teacher to really be on your toes and be able to give them something else and not just tell them, well, you can read a book for 2 days while everyone else is finishing up, because that's just not good. You know, that's
No,
like
that's, yeah, you need to do better than that as a teacher. And you know, one of the things that I do with that, how I address that in my class, is we always start the beginning of the semester with a lot of brainstorming as far as choice projects. Kids, what kids want to work on, like if you want to do #genius hour, whatever. But we spend a lot of time coming up with some ideas, and so that's always in the back of their mind, and it's also sort of a fallback if they are done, or if they're just sick of something. If I have a 3-week project that they get sick of after 2 weeks and they need a break, they always have that to fall back on. They have something else that kind of piques their interest and kind of drives them a little bit. And so if they always have a choice project or 2 choice projects that are always kind of in the back of their mind, then that really helps those kids.
One of the things, so I'm kind of juggling a couple things right here. I see we got a question. I had a difficult time earlier trying to get that answered, so I may or may not get to that. I might punt a question to you. I'll set you up and then pass off to you. When we started thinking about this grading, the thing that I thought was, no one talks about rubrics enough, in that we think of rubrics as being this silver magic bullet that will make something that is hard to quantify quantifiable. And I'll be honest, I have some really generic rubrics that gets back to what you said early on, which is like, how do I streamline this process? And I feel that I'm oftentimes looking for many of the same things, and then every project I'm looking for something that's specific and unique. So I'll keep a lot of my categories the same from project to project, and then I'll throw in 1 or 2 new things, okay? But here's the dirty secret, and maybe you can speak to this too, is I know before I fill out a rubric, I want that kid to get an A. I want that kid's work to get a B. I know in my expert opinion of teaching for 10 years, that's A work, that's B work, that's C work, this kid totally missed the boat. And then you go into the rubric kind of already knowing what you want the points to add up to, and there's something that feels a little bit dishonest or shady to me. So I don't know if you've got some experience with that or some thoughts.
Well, a couple things. Yeah, I suppose that can fall in my dirty little secret category too. But there will be times where I'll be like, "Oh, is that really an A minus?" And then you'll go back and be like, "Oh, maybe we need a 4 instead of a 3 here," or maybe, "Oh, I don't want it to have that good of a grade. Maybe that composition is only a 2," and you'll go back and kind of change things. Which honestly, if you're doing rubrics right, that should not ever happen. But I think a lot of teachers do that. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe teachers don't do that, but I most definitely do. And then along those same lines, if I'm really pressed for time, I really need to grade, sometimes I will just go through a stack of projects and just lay it into, here's the A pile, here's the B pile, here's the C pile, without a... and then just zoom through those on the back. Just, oh, here are the best ones, and you sort of fit the rubric to that preconceived grade, that idea that you have in your head, which, it's not the right way to do things, but I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do, and I used to do that too, and I gotta say, I do that a little bit less, but I know that I'm still gaming the rubrics to get it what I want. The other weird thing about rubrics, and this is almost the flip side of it, because I've had a couple different rubrics now, and one is a 5-point scale, so then it kind of tallies up to be 25. I have 5 categories. Then I had another rubric that was much the same, but for some reason in this learning management system, Schoology, that I use, I had it having 4, 1 through 4. And I noticed that I think it's math. We don't want to make weird numbers. Okay, what does a 3.7 out of a 4 look like versus a 4 out of 5? So I was giving good work a 3.5 out of 4, and then when I thought about it, okay, 0.4 off is the bottom of an A minus. So even this work that I thought was good, I was giving it all a B. And then when I went to a 5, it was easier for me to call it a 4.5 because, half integers, that's easy.
Yeah.
But I noticed that even the way I set my rubric up, one class was getting much lower scores for the same work while one class was getting higher. So that's just a moment that I caught myself, and I tried to go back and fix it where even by the design of the assessment tool, there were some riggings and things going on that made it not be neutral. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of those things. Like, we've spent so much time in my district recently, sort of rewriting the art curriculum, and we have all of these gorgeous rubrics that look beautiful, and I don't know if they're doing what we need them to do, though.
Mm-hmm.
I hope we're on the right track, but it's kind of a weird thing to take something that's rather subjective and try and squeeze it into these categories and give it just the right grade.
Do you find that your kids get more? I mean, you said they're not doing what you think they're doing. I think I know what you mean by that, but maybe you could clarify that. And then maybe to piggyback off of that question, what you wish your rubrics were doing, how do you think your students take self-assessments, and do you use those, and do they like them?
Yeah, okay, so I think as far as the rubrics go, I think what we're trying to do with those is take the subjectivity out of grading, try and make it really, really objective, which art inherently is a really subjective thing. And so I think, like we talked about a little earlier, personal biases are going to come in no matter what you do. And, the rubric, I suppose, helps kids kind of know what they're going for, but I don't know that it helps our grading or makes our grading better. So that's just kind of where I'm going with that. As far as self-assessment goes, I think rubrics are pretty necessary there, just to give kids a jumping off point to kind of talk about their work, especially kids who don't have a lot of experience with art. Mm-hmm. And, one thing we kind of talked about off air is just, kids when they're doing self-assessments are so harsh. Like, they give themselves, like a D+ on stuff that I would give a B+, A-.
Right.
Kind of a crazy thing.
So one of the things, we had a question come in, and I think only I can see that since I set this up. It was really a practical question about time and how much time do we allocate towards grading. And I think, all teachers, it kind of depends. It's weird. You'll go a week where there's not a lot to assess or grade because of student projects, but then you'll have this just flood of assignments because everything's due kind of at the same time. I will say this, and then maybe you can run with that idea. Since we've switched to a learning management system, Schoology, and I know I sound like I work for them because I talk about them all the time, but I really do like it. It has streamlined my assessments, and I tell kids I won't grade your work until it's uploaded onto Schoology as a photo, because I used to collect everything. Then it would take me a couple weeks to get it all graded and back to them, and they're antsy, they want it back, or it gets ruined, or it gets lost. Not that that would happen often, but I just don't even mess with that anymore. They take a photo themselves, they upload it, they can do a self-assessment, and they take it home that day as soon as they're done. And I tell them, even today I had kids ask me, is this photo good enough? Is this what you want? And I tell them, it's like, really, I know the work you've done. I've been watching you over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. I really just need that photograph as a kind of placeholder so that I remember kind of what you did, so then I can give you some feedback. But that learning management system has streamlined it for me, and I would say I grade every single day now, but for a lot less. So it's like 30 minutes a day versus the one monster weekend of like going in for 4 hours and just working on it. So I do like it. So how about you? How much time are you thinking you're spending?
As I talked about with those, one-on-one conferences earlier, I found that saved me a lot of time after school, especially if kids will, turn it in like, hey, you want to talk about this right now? And, we can get to that. But like you said, I think, first off, sorry, I'm tripping over my thoughts here, but my school is not great with technology, so I'm still, creating piles and going through those. But a point that you made that I think works really well is, if you are walking around enough, if you are talking to your kids enough, you've seen this work develop for, 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe, and so you know exactly what it looks like, and you had a grade in mind quite a while ago. And so a lot of times it will be pretty quickly. So I try not to spend too much time outside of school grading. Like I said, a lot of it is done during class. And then, if there are things that need to be done after class, maybe half an hour, I'll just sit there and go through like, oh yeah, this got turned in. I've been watching them for a couple weeks now, and this is the grade that we're going with. So, I try not to spend too much time just because, like you said, it's not the highest priority for me. I don't think it's the most important thing that we do. So, at the most, half an hour after school.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hey, I don't know, has Jen been in contact with you? If she's been able to...
I have not seen anything, so I'm afraid the technical difficulties are continuing. So we may have to skip on out without her tonight.
Well, let's, it's getting fairly late, and we've talked probably longer than we both intended to. We're both, I think, big old hot airbags here. You want to...
Probably longer than most people want to listen to us.
You want to... Let's do a lightning round. Maybe I could ask you a question, and then you can ask...
do it. Go for it.
Okay, let's do... Well, I hope I'm not thinking of the same one you are, but, I think about growing up. I grew up near Omaha, and I think about when I grew up and teachers. So tell me the best teacher you've ever had, and what grade was it, and why were they the best teacher?
Okay. Actually, can I start with the worst teacher I've ever had?
Yeah, but no names.
No, we won't share any names, but... Like, in all honesty, the reason I became an art teacher was my sophomore teacher for art was the worst teacher I've ever had, like, in my entire schooling career. And that's what made me want to be an art teacher. Like, I wanted to love art so badly, and she just made it so miserable that I couldn't. And so I just kept thinking, like, why is this so hard? I could do this so much better than she does. And that really got me thinking on, how do I want to do this? Like, I could be an art teacher. I could do good things with this. I can actually make kids enjoy art.
Right.
And so that is, kind of my driving force, kind of what turned me into an art teacher. So that's kind of a different story, maybe not the angle that you're looking for there. But when I was doing undergrad at the University of Iowa, there was a professor there named Craig Adcock. He's actually an art history professor, and he was just incredible. I mean, he was dry and erudite and just like, your typical stuffy type professor, but he just had this love for art. One of the smartest guys I've ever had. Had a master's in astrophysics and a PhD in art history, so that was a good little combination. But he loved Duchamp like nothing else, and just got me into all of this modern art. And it's just kind of infused me with a love of art history that has continued on for 15 years. So he's definitely one of my best. So I'm going to turn that right back around to you. Who were your big influences? Who were your best teachers?
Oh man, it's so funny because as you were telling me that story, we need to talk probably off camera because it's so uncanny. I had kind of a similar experience in high school, and I had we were kind of talking about she wanted to be a teacher someday, and I said one of the reasons that I knew I wanted to be a teacher was I didn't have a real good high school experience, and I kind of thought to myself, like, I can do better than this. So maybe we should talk and see if we actually like went to the same high school and we're just a few years apart or something. But yeah, that's kind of funny because most people who are art teachers might say, well, my art teacher really was just amazing and opened up my eyes. And I was like, I kind of grew into this profession out of spite, which is kind of weird. But without a doubt, I have a bunch of them, but I would say my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Haskell, and sometimes I get kind of choked up when I think about this, but it seems weird to say, like, okay, so in fourth grade you're like 10 going on 11, to think that someone could change your life, but I kind of felt already in fourth grade that I had kind of a negative self-image of my abilities as a student and of education. I was the class clown, didn't really care about school at all, and I think, you know, to kind of summarize why she was so amazing was she didn't let me get away with that stuff. She saw something in me. She saw potential. She knew kind of this act of not caring and being too cool for school was an act. And I mean, she really turned my academic career around so that, you know, fifth grade, sixth grade, junior high, I really started to get into school and education. And, you know, I think it's a simple thing. She saw something in me and she cared about me. So one of the things I've tried as a teacher to always do is, and I think this is what good teachers can do, is to see the good in kids. You know, even your roughest, toughest kids, to look at them and to see the potential that they have. You know, so yeah, she was an awesome one. So
yeah, awesome.
Well, hey man, let's wrap this up, and we will hopefully do this again sometime. What I can say to people who have kind of watched this live and who watch it on my YouTube channel, or go to the Art of Ed website, and definitely go to the Art of Ed website to check for kind of updates on if and when this will be streaming live and when this could come at you again. Hopefully another version with some fewer technical difficulties.
Yeah, we can do better next time. So, all right, well, thanks everybody for joining us. It's been fun, and hopefully we will see you again soon.
All right, thanks, Tim. Yep, bye everybody.